Wednesday Wonders. I'm Ranger Erin, and today we are going to be wondering about how to use nature in order to make prints, because nature is really full of great patterns that we can incorporate into our artwork. So our keyword today is going to be texture, because printmaking is going to be where you make a 2D image that's going to be a flat image on paper, but it's going to be using texture, so something that has ridges and bumps. And of course we know that there's a lot of stuff out here that is going to have a lot of great texture that is both going to help us to learn about nature. So being that good naturalist is a lot about observation, but also can give us some great ideas for all of our arts that we like to do. Mostly, this video is going to be a whole bunch of different techniques of printmaking and some things that are pretty closely related to printmaking and using natural textures in order to make some different projects. So you're going to see a few different techniques and then you're going to choose one for your activity. Starting off with a non-printmaking activity, we're going to do leaf and bark rubbing. So that's going to be using the texture of bark and leaves in order to make that image on our paper. It's going to be the least amount of materials that you're going to need, but it's also a really great way to start building a plant book. So if you're looking to start to think about IDing different plants and trees, tree rubbings, bark rubbings, and leaf rubbings are a really great way to go. You can even think about doing these rubbings with some fossils as well. For leaf and bark rubbing, you're going to need paper and you're going to need some stripped crayon. So make sure that you peel off all of that outer paper, whatever type of crayon you're using. You're going to take your paper, you're going to place it over whatever you're going to be doing that rubbing of. So you can place it down on the table and put the leaf underneath the paper, or if you're doing a tree like I am, I'm going to do some bark rubbings. I'm going to put that paper right on that tree and then I'm just going to run the crayon over top of it. Next up, getting into clay. We're going to make a clay tile with some type of natural imprint in it. So we're going to make a nice flat tile that's going to be a smooth surface for us to print and get that texture of some natural object to go straight into that clay. Let it dry, and then maybe later you can paint that with some paints if you really like that. For making our clay tiles, we're going to smooth out a nice shape. So I chose to make some rectangles because I think that that's a little bit easier for me, but you could also do any shape that you want. And then we're going to make it smooth with some water and then very carefully press that natural object with a nice texture right into the top of it. And remember, if you're doing something very thin, then it's going to be a little bit harder to see. If you're doing something thick, it's going to make a bigger impression. So think big meaty stuff to press into your clay. Next up is a traditional printmaking activity from Japan that's called gyutaku, and this is going to be fish printing. So for this activity, you would actually have to go out fishing, catch a live fish, and then make a print of that live fish. It's totally safe for the fish so long as you make sure that you're picking a non-toxic ink and you move really quickly. I'm going to be using a fake fish for this video. For gyutaku, you're going to need some diluted ink, a cotton ball, or a non-toxic stamp pad. I'm not sure if this one's non-toxic, but I'm not too worried about it since I'm not using a real fish. In this process, you're going to put the ink over top of the fish very quickly, especially if it's alive, and then you're going to press the paper on top of it gently so that we're not hurting that fish. And then you get a nice print of your fish. You can see the scales on there, and you can see all of the fins. Our last two are going to be again coming back to that traditional printmaking with paper and inks and paints. So our first one here is going to be just printing the texture of that natural object onto paper. This is going to need the most supplies. And for this technique, you're going to need a brayer, some block printing ink that I've already got down on some type of smooth surface, like plexiglass works really well, but if you've got some type of plastic or wood that's very smooth, you can use that as well. And then you're gonna need a lot of paper. So first we're gonna use our brayer to just kind of roll out our ink until it's nice and smooth. And we're kind of loading up our brayer. Now we're going to take our object, which is a feather for me, and I'm going to place it down and roll that ink over top of it. And very carefully move it over to my paper. With a scrap piece of paper. Lastly, very similar to the last one, we're just going to make this silhouette. So this is going to work really great for flat objects that we can put paint around the edge and then remove the object and then just have that really perfect silhouette of our natural object. For this technique, you can stick with the brayer, but I'm actually going to go ahead and switch over to some paint and a paintbrush. Lay that object down on your paper, and then you're just going to paint from the inside out. So I hope one of these really got you excited. Start thinking about that because you're gonna have that idea of which activity you wanna do for your hike. Your hike today is gonna be a materials gathering hike and an inspiration hike. So you're gonna go out with a pair of scissors and a bag, and you're gonna collect some materials for one of those printmaking activities that we went over. So look for really interesting textures. There's a lot of seeds out there, a lot of really nice leaves that have some great textures to them. Some words of warning: make sure you're not going to grab anything that you don't know what it is, because some of our plants will give you kind of a skin sensitivity, like poison ivy or poison hemlock, so we want to avoid those ones that we don't know. And then also, when you're collecting some stuff, make sure you're not picking the only one of that kind. So if there's one plant and all the other ones are totally different, we want to make sure that we're leaving those rare plants alone, pick some common ones, and then also make sure you're not going to be destroying that plant. So don't take the only leaf that that plant has, take a leaf from a plant that has many leaves. Thanks for joining me. I'll catch you all next time.